We are so thankful that we have this topic, the joy of healthy living. And I pray that you are enjoying the health that God has given each one of us. Okay. Thank you. Okay, our topic for today is hypertension. Now, that is a medical term for really what we call high blood pressure. And it is such a big problem. Let us see the statistics. According to the World Health Organization, 1 out of 3 is suffering from high blood pressure. That means if we are about 50 here, you can say that there are about 17 who are suffering from high blood pressure. Even in our families, for instance, my family, we are 5 siblings in the family. 2 of my what we call siblings are suffering from high blood pressure. And 1 is already in the borderline. So you can see it is a serious health problem. And this is actually the statistics that we have. 7.5 million deaths in the whole world. That accounts to about 12.5 deaths in the whole world. In 1980, 600 million people were diagnosed with high blood pressure. And this actually jumped to 1 billion in 2008. So now in the whole world, there's about 1:6, because we are considering 1:7, considering that you have what we call young children or infants. But if you only take into the adults, you have 1 out of 3 of the adults are suffering from high blood pressure. And what is high blood pressure? Well, it is because of numbers. Simple numbers, and yet it can actually cause devastating effect in individuals, not only that, but also in the labor force and also in families. So how are we going to interpret? Now, this is the machine that you can actually measure your blood pressure these days. You have what we call these electrical gadgets which would be able to measure. It was not like before that somebody has to put a stethoscope and then listen to some sounds here produced by the heart. But now these days you can buy this electrical digital what we call blood pressure monitor. And by just turning it on, you'd be able to get your numbers. And I hope that you know your numbers. Let me see. How many of you have known about your blood pressure this year? Okay, because I know maybe some of you had taken your blood pressure maybe last year. That's different because the blood pressure changes. So let me just see. Those of us who know our blood pressure this year. Okay, at least you have quite a couple of hands who are actually to raise that they know their blood pressure this year, because some of us would think, anyway, I had my blood pressure taken in 2018 and they think it is the same blood pressure. I advise you that you should take your blood pressure every 3 months. That is if you are normal. But if you have an abnormal reading, then you should actually be taking your blood pressure at least daily on a daily basis. We recommend really people who are suffering from high blood pressure, they should have this gadget. But anyway, before we go into that, what is really the importance of blood pressure? Okay. Now, I'm sure many of us are very familiar with this instrument called a harp. Now, you know that the harp is able to play because it has the right amount of tension, okay? So now, even before harps are going to be played, there is somebody who is going to tune it. That is true with the violin. That is true with any string instruments. Because you see, if you are going to have the string that is not so tight, that I say it is loose, do you think you can produce music? No, you cannot produce because it's not going to make any sound. But if you are also going to stretch it too much, what happens? It's going to break and there is no sound at all. Okay? So in order for you to be able to have the right sound, then you should apply the right what we call tension. Okay? And this is it, similarly with life. Life is like the harp string. If it is strung too tight, it won't play. It's very loose. If it is too loose, it hangs. The tension that produces the beautiful sound lies in the middle. And similarly with the heart, all of our lives are actually depend on this pressure. Because if the pressure of our hearts are too low, or the bodies, you cannot really function, and I'm going to discuss that. And if it is going to be too high, it is going to produce what we call complication. So now, let us look about the pressure, okay? The pressure to pump blood. Can you imagine, okay, that the heart is like a pump, and it has to be able to pump blood down. Well, that is not so hard because going down is with gravity, but now you have to remember that it has to go up. And that is the problem, because if there is not enough what we call pressure in the system, then the blood is not able to come back. And also imagine the blood has to reach the brain, and that is difficult because you're now fighting against what we call gravity. So what is the normal blood pressure? Now, this has been revised last year, okay? 2017, in January, the American Medical Association, the American Heart Association, actually made a revision, okay? And this is the latest revision. Okay, the green one is normal. So your blood pressure should be 120 or below, over 80 or below, okay? Now, when we say elevated, that means it is between 120 to 129 over 80. Now, before, this elevated was considered to be actually still normal, you see? But now they said no. This green and yellow before were considered to be normal. But now, they said no, that is not the one. What is important is should you have 120 over 80. And similarly, even the European Association have also come up with this guideline because they have found out that even at what we call a blood pressure of 121, okay, 121 to 129, okay, that is the one there, 120 to 129, that's the second part, elevated, you still actually have an increased risk of developing heart attacks and also strokes. That's the reason why they had to actually, when they made this change in what we call the guidelines for high blood pressure, all of a sudden, more than 100 million people became already high blood pressure. You see, they become diabetic. They became what we call hypertensive. And the higher you actually deviate from this number, the more dangerous. Like for instance, if you have an elevated blood pressure, maybe your chances is about 2 times. But if you are going to go to, for instance, 130 to 139, you have more 5 times of developing what we call strokes and heart attacks compared to the normal individual. You see, the heart is like a pump, okay? You have a small pump, and the size of your heart is just like actually the size of our fist, okay? Some maybe have a bigger heart because you are working very well. That's it, okay? And it has to pump blood through all the parts of the body. Now, like for instance, the pump, and if you have a tall building like this, that means that the pump is able to reach the highest building, or else people are going to complain. The pump is useless unless it is able to produce water until the highest part that everybody is going to receive what we call water, okay? Now, as we said that the heart is like a pump, it is going to pump blood to different parts of the body, like for instance, our muscles, okay? The reason why we are able to run, we are able to walk, is because we are being supplied with blood, oxygen, and nutrition, okay? Now, we have so many muscles in our bodies, okay? And the muscles are the major, what we call, consumers of oxygen and nutrition, okay? Not only that, but you also need blood to be able to go to the different organs, like breathing, okay? Without breathing, we cannot actually be alive. Like, for instance, digestion, all of this in the kidneys also in order for it to filter, and also what we call the liver, okay? So what happens if there is not enough pressure, there is low blood pressure? That means the pump is not able to deliver the needed blood supply, oxygen, and nutrition to the different parts of the body. What happens? Number one that is going to be affected are our kidneys, okay? Now, we actually just assume that the kidneys are there, and it's true. But really, I tell you, kidneys are very important because the kidneys are the organs that eliminate waste through water. There are 2 what we call eliminating systems in our bodies. One is the liver, which eliminates what we call solid. And it is the kidneys because it also eliminates through fluid, okay? And you will notice that because your urination is going to be affected. Some people then there's going to be decrease in urinary output, which is a bad sign. That means your body is not cleaning itself very well. But some, if there is not enough blood pressure, your urine even is going to stop. So one ways that you can find out is to see that you have actually good urination and to be able to pass out urine at least about 500 to 600 ml minimum per day. If you are actually passing urine below 500 ml, you have to watch out because that means there is problem with the pressure and there is also problem with what we call the ability of the body to eliminate, okay? And of course, when your blood pressure is also low, that means not enough blood is going into your brain and you are going to become dizzy and confused. Not only that, but you can in fact faint. And you can see this, okay? Your legs are going to swell. And this is it. As we are going to grow older, because the heart becomes a little bit weaker, and you will know that because as you are going to sit here, for instance, 2 hours, then you see, oh, how come my legs are swelling now? And people who are riding airplanes, after about 8 hours, oh, how come now my legs are swollen? That is a sign that your heart is becoming faint and weak, you see? And of course, your hands too. Now, the first part is the legs, but if it is serious, even your hands are going to be what we call swollen. That is low blood pressure. So you can see that pressure is very important. And if the pressure is also going to be too high, and that is what we call hypertension, then just like when you have a big pressure in your pipes and the pipes are a little bit leaky, then you're going to have burst pipes. And this can happen actually in your brain, and we call what we call stroke. And this is very dangerous because you see when the stroke happens to us, then people are going to have disabilities, and we are going to also mention that later on. But if the pressure is normal, then people are happy, people are able to do their normal work, people are going to be able to accomplish their task in the academics because, you know, you need to have the right pressure to be able to think, to be able to go to school, to be able to memorize. Okay, as I said, that is the normal blood pressure, 120/80. Now, you know, for the first number, you would say, okay, that is the systole. But you can say the first number or the second number is what we call the diastole, or what we call the relaxation. But just for you to be able to understand, there are always two numbers, the upper number and the lower number. So when you are going to quote your blood pressure, you have to quote the upper and the lower, okay? And this is the borderline blood pressure, 121 to 130, okay, over 81 to 89. Borderline. But as I said, once you have borderline, that is already a danger signal that you have to do something about your blood pressure, because it is very easy for you to slip once you go into what we call borderline into what we call frank high blood pressure, okay? Anything above that would be considered now as high blood pressure, okay? You have to realize that blood pressure is dynamic. That means it changes. Like for instance, if I'm going to take my blood pressure now, and after that I'm going to take it 2 minutes later on, they are different. So you're going to say, why is it that it is actually changing? Number one, if you are standing, your blood pressure is higher compared to when you are sitting. When you are talking, actually the blood pressure actually also rises. When you are actually sitting with your legs crossed like that, you actually are going to have more blood pressure compared to when you are actually just sitting actually straight. Why? Is because the blood, that means that the heart is going to overcome. Now, for instance, if I'm going to be squatting like this, that actually my blood pressure is going to be higher. Why? It's because when I sit this way, that means that the blood, when the heart is to overcome the resistance, then you see, it's just like a hose. You know the water pipe? If you are going to fill the water pipe, do you think that the water is able to pass through? No. And yet, it is amazing that when we are going to do like this, yet the blood is able to pass this way. Because if the blood is not able to pass this way, my legs are going to starve with oxygen. That is amazing how actually God made a human body. Part of it is because of the elasticity. So, you have to realize that blood pressure varies from 1 minute to every minute, depending on your activity. Like people who are carrying a heavy load, blood pressure goes up. Because why? It has to overcome the resistance. And not only that, but high blood pressure is also dependent actually about what we call the size and the elasticity of what we call the blood vessels. Remember, the heart has to pump blood through what we call the different blood vessels. And the blood vessels are supposed to be elastic, okay? So really what happens in high blood pressure? The elasticity of what we call the blood vessels are going to be compromised. Okay, this is the blood vessel, for instance, okay? That is how it is, and it is closed. What happens is that God has made our blood vessels to be elastic, to be able to expand, so that when the heart is going to pump, and the blood is going to pass through, it is going to expand like this. And the blood is able to pass. So every time that the heart is pumping, whoop, whoop, and then it goes back, whoop, it goes back. And that's the reason why the heart is able to pump blood even when we are going to be squatting like this, is because of the elasticity. Now the problem is that this elasticity is going to be lost, or it is going to be compromised, or it has to be decreased by several factors, okay? Like for instance, the pipes, okay? These are the pipes. And what happens is that if they are going to be corroded, that means even though there is a good pump, but because it is corroded, then there is going to be a decrease in water that is going into your homes, okay? And we know that is it, okay? This is the rusted water pipe. And it can even cause blockage, you see? And that is the problem, because the blood pressure then is going to increase if your blood vessels are no longer that elastic. It becomes hardened, okay? Okay, that is, for instance, one of the reasons why you are going to have what we call decrease or increase in blood pressure, because now the passage of the blood vessel becomes narrowed. Now you can see that this one is normal and starting, and that is what we call cholesterol. And then high blood, wherein you have now what we call narrowing. So now the heart has to pump, because now it is so hard. Okay, I have to push. I have to push every time. Now can you see how difficult it is now for the heart? That means the heart is going to work harder to be able to overcome the resistance of the blood vessels. Okay, now, what causes actually a rise in the blood pressure? Okay, number one, hereditary. Okay, and it is true. Like for instance, in my family, we have actually high blood pressure. Part of it is because, okay, my grandfather had high blood pressure, maternal grandfather had high blood pressure, maternal grandfather had also high blood pressure, maternal grandmother had high blood pressure. My mother had high blood pressure, you see. In fact, my maternal grandfather actually died of a stroke because of high blood pressure, you see. Now my father has high blood pressure, my mother has high blood pressure. Now my sister has high blood pressure, my brother has high blood pressure, you see. So hereditary. But even though you are actually having a hereditary tendency, that does not mean that you are just going to succumb to it. That depends actually on your lifestyle. So you cannot really make an excuse and say, it is within our family that we have this problem. And you just say, it's not out of my hand, but really, you can do something about it. Number two, if you are what we call overweight, and especially if you are obese, okay? Now, maybe you can do some what we call advice when people come to the clinic and tell them about whether they are overweight, you see, because that is one big problem. Imagine if your ideal body weight is only something about 70, okay? And you are going to be 90 kilograms. How much more work the heart is going to do, because that means it has to actually feed 20 kilos more of tissue. Okay, 70 and you go to 90. Or let's just say 70, you go to 75. That is about 5 kilos excess. That means your heart has to work harder to be able to deliver blood and nutrition to the different parts of the body that are 5 kg. The more it is going to be if you're going to be 10 kg. Have you actually tried to be bringing 10 kg all the while, or 20 kg? Or let us just say 20 kg. All the time, you're bringing a suitcase of 20 kg wherever you go. 20 kg. That is exactly what happens. So, it is very advisable that we are going to have what we call the ideal body weight, okay? Maybe we can come to that later on. And these days, because of tight-fitting clothes and, of course, the belt that we have, that means that there is constriction in the different parts of the body. That means, again, the heart has to overcome. It is better to have loose, but unfortunately, because of what we call fashion these days, some of these fashions, they want you to look really slim, so you have to have tight clothes. Okay, wow, look sexy now, you see. Salt intake. Salt is a very great cause of high blood pressure, especially here in Africa. I have actually known somebody, he used to be the president of the union. He was going to school and then he had high blood pressure. And the doctor just told him, why don't we try to just decrease the salt? Do not add salt when you are going to eat. And immediately the blood pressure actually decreased. It became normal. Why? It's because salt, number one, as you know, salt causes corrosion. You know, a car, if you're going to have a car near Mombasa, because it is near the seaport and they have a lot of salt there, your car actually becomes rusted faster compared to if your car is here in what we call Eldoret, because you don't have what we call the environment of salt. All cars or all what we call metals that are near the seashore have high corrosion compared to those that are far away from the ocean. Okay? And number two is that salt also attracts water. Remember, if you're going to eat salt, then you're going to be thirsty, then you want to drink water, which is good, you see? And similarly, when you have actually a lot of salt in your body, it attracts the water and it makes the blood heavier. Okay, salt and water retention. Number three, cholesterol and fats. I actually showed you a while ago how the blood vessels have been blocked because of cholesterol. And cholesterol is one also of the factors that makes our blood vessel harder. If you're going to be eating salt and you're going to be eating meat now that are actually do what we call 2 risk factors. Diabetes, and we're going to be discussing about diabetes tomorrow. Diabetes because of the heavy load of sugar. You have excess sugar in your system. And as you know, the sugar also is going to attract water. Kidney problems. People who have problems with the kidneys, like stones, for instance, or other disease in the kidneys, is going to cause an increase in the blood pressure. There are certain drugs like steroids. There are some of what we call medications for clogged nose, which has what we call phenylpropanolamine, which has a tendency to increase your blood pressure. Tobacco and alcohol. Tobacco makes the blood vessels harder and it becomes firm and rigid. And similarly with alcohol, because you see, alcohol damages the blood vessels, and when your blood vessels are damaged, then they become harder. Well, that's the whole thing, because you see, the blood pressure affects all parts of the bodies and practically everywhere. But there are certain what we call organs of the body that are more affected than the others. Okay, effects on the arteries, for instance, as I said, the arteries are going to narrow, they are going to become more rigid, and they are not going to be elastic, they are going to be not flexible. And when that happens, the first organ that is going to be affected is going to be the heart. That means that the heart has to pump faster, so the heart has to enlarge. You know, there's a difference if your heart is a little bit bigger because you are working, that means the muscles have become more strong. But if your heart is going to be bigger because it actually is overworking, because it has to overcome the resistance, that is dangerous because later on your heart is going to fail. Okay? And number one, there's going to be enlargement of the heart, there's going to be dilatation of the heart, there's going to be overwork of the heart, And at the same time, because the heart is overworked, the tendency for it to fail is bigger when it comes to high blood pressure. One of the complications of high blood pressure is heart failure. Now, depending on the degree of heart failure, if it is only class 1, that's not so much. But when it is class 3, you even have difficulty breathing because now water is going into your lungs because the heart is not able to pump enough to let it circulate. Class 3, class 4, then you are just having difficulty of breathing. Okay, the eyes, because when there is going to be high blood pressure, then that pressure is going to cause the blood vessels in your eyes to pop. Now, some people, because of the high blood pressure, they are going to see floaters. That is one symptom that you actually have high blood pressure wherein you can see something like a feather or a little cloud or a little bubble that is actually floating. When you look at people, you can see that there is a floater going on. That is actually a sign that you have high blood pressure. We call it floaters. Not only that, but it can also cause blindness in the long run. Why? Is because our eyes have what we call the retina. That's the retina that is at the back, wherein that is going to have the picture seen. And then this retina is going to be detached because of the high blood pressure. When it gets detached, you are going to lose your vision. Well, the good thing is that you can go immediately to the doctor, and the doctor can fix it. They can do what we call welding these days, like a welding machine, you see. But I tell you, you will notice that you have actually retinal detachment because all of a sudden your vision gets destroyed. You cannot see anymore. If not, it becomes blurred. Then, of course, the kidneys. The kidneys are very sensitive to high blood pressure. And when that happens, then you are not going to be able to pass out urine. And that means all the waste products are going to accumulate in your body. And what is also very disastrous is what we call hemorrhagic stroke. All of a sudden, you are talking and you are going to faint, you're going to collapse, that happens. And later on, you're in the hospital, and people now are going to be actually having what we call paralysis of one side. Those people wherein you see who are actually dragging, like for instance, my grandfather, when he had a stroke, then he was paralyzed one half of his body, and he would be walking like this, you see. Well, some people actually become permanently what we call this, they cannot anymore walk, like my aunt. My aunt actually had a stroke, and now she is just bedridden. And when you are going to be bedridden, you're going to develop bed sores. It's good that she's in America and they're doing good care for her, and her stroke is not really that bad, that she has been already bedridden for the past 10 years. See, can you just imagine the loss of productivity because of what we call strokes? Whereas my grandfather, my father-in-law, 5 years ago had a stroke, and because it was so bad, he was just lying down. And after 2 weeks, he died, because if you keep on lying down, then you're going to develop pneumonia, you're going to develop infection, and you die because of that infection. Similarly with my maternal grandfather, when he had the second stroke, it was a massive stroke, he became unconscious, and he was in the hospital. Hey, they put all sorts of tubes, tube in the nose, tube in the mouth, tube here. He was lying down. And you know, when you're at the ICU, because they put you in the ICU, you know what an ICU means? It means actually intensive care unit, but really it means intensive cash unit. Why? It's because you'll be paying every time. Pay. And so the children were discussing, what are we going to do? Let us sell the property. So they started to sell the property of my grandfather to pay for the hospital bills. Can you see how big? That's why, my friends, please, let us take this seriously, okay? Finally, after 2 weeks, they said, I think he cannot wake up. Let us just stop all of those, what we call artificial measures, breathing. Then he died. Of course, premature death, you see. So, my friends, please, take this seriously. So, here are the things that we can do. Cut on salt, okay? You know, it's very easy for us. You see. There is already added salt when people cook, so that's much better if we're not going to add salt. But sometimes because our taste is already used to that salt, we need to put. But anyway, cut on animal fat. Exercise is very important, because exercise makes the blood vessel flexible, whether exercise in the farm, which is very good. That means you are becoming productive just rather than just like running. You see, running is good, you see. But if you can come up with an exercise that is productive, so much the better, because that means you'll be able to produce something and have money. Manage stress. Reduce weight. As I said, if you think that you're overweight, and I think when you're going to come to the clinic, they're going to check, I think you're a little bit overweight, you need. You need to cut on your weight. No alcohol. Okay, Seventh-day Adventist, thanks for that. No smoking. Yeah, we also don't do that one. But remember that we are also exposed to secondhand smoke, isn't it? When we go out there, people are smoking, you don't know that you're going to be affected too. You see, so you watch out. Don't go near people who are smoking. And of course, very important is what we call stress management. You know, stress actually increases your blood pressure, okay? Unconsciously, like for instance, this friend of mine, she actually was so upset with the helper because the helper was not a good nanny. She didn't take care of her children. And she was so upset, all of a sudden the blood pressure went up, and then a blood vessel broke in her brain, and she fainted. She was in the ICU for about 3-5 days, but then later on she died, you see. So stress, watch out for stress, okay? I don't know here, Prof, how is the stress here? No, it's a nice environment here, isn't it? Wow, fresh air, people can exercise, okay. And what is very important, you see, trust in the Lord with all your heart, because all of us are actually subjected to stress, because if there is no stress, there is no production. Just as I said, like a violin, if the stress is too low, there is no music. And if the stress is too high, then you're going to actually have a breakdown. Stress is important in life, because you see, if we are not going to have stress, we're not going to do anything. Just relax all the time. You're not having any productivity. So stress, which is actually at what we call optimum level, is good because it also stimulates you to be productive, stimulates you from day to day, and you have a reason to wake up every morning, okay? Now, of course, we have to realize, you see, because there are so many stressful factors in this life. If you just think about Al-Shabaab, isn't it? If Al-Shabaab is going to come to this campus, can you just imagine? And you are all the time thinking, you say, well, God, you know everything. Anybody can just, in fact, fall down and have a stroke. You cross the street there, you can be hit by a motorcycle, isn't it? But you see, we need to trust in the Lord. Because one of the reasons why people are stressful, people are what they call anxious and apprehensive and nervous, is because we lack trust in the Lord. It's very important. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Because, when we commit our lives to God, you say, God, I don't know what lies ahead. I don't know a minute from now what's going to happen, but you know what is best for me. I have surrendered my life to you, and please take care of me. And the Lord is going to take care of His children. He's not going to neglect His children. So one of the best ways that we can actually conquer blood pressure problems is really trusting in the Lord. May you have a good day today, trusting in the Lord. Shall we pray? Father, thank you for this beautiful day that you have made. Thank you for this beautiful campus which you have placed here. Thank you for the leadership that are promoting the goals of heaven. I pray that you will please continue to bless each worker here. May they realize that it is such a tremendous privilege to be working in this institution and to be in this pure and friendly and at the same time also relaxing environment. I pray that you will please bless each one of our workers here, that they will realize that they are working for you and not for men. May they lift up your name. And I pray that you will be with our administrators, our officers, and especially our VC with a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. I pray, Father, that you'll pour out your blessings, your guidance on the leadership of this place. And may this place continue to shine. And please continue to keep us healthy and strong, and whatever problems we have medically, may we seek the needed medical attention. All this I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, one thing I should say, if you are actually having high blood pressure, you take your medications. Take your medications because medications have been proven really to help you. Do not neglect the medications.